We're going to begin in John chapter 3. Begin in John chapter 3, and then from there we're going to Mark chapter 6. So John 3 and then Mark 6. John 3 is the segue from last week. So in John chapter 3, we've mentioned this time and time again because it is so important. The conversation Jesus had with Nicodemus. And in John chapter 3 and verse 3 is the only time he mentions being born again. That's it. One time. Okay? And he says, truly, truly, with confident certainty, I say to you, unless as one is born from above, because that's what born again means, born from above, he cannot see the kingdom. See is oida in the Greek, and it means, I see what you mean, I see what you're saying. So when Jesus started teaching on the kingdom, only those, now obviously nobody was born again until he went to the cross, but you get the point. When the kingdom is taught, only those who are born again have the ability to see what you're saying, to see what you're talking about. Okay? Those who can't see what you're saying are apparently enlightened. Because the born-again experience gives us the capacity to see. See what? The kingdom. When we say the kingdom, we're not talking about Disney and the Magic Kingdom. No. But if you ever watch the Tim Allen Santa Claus movies, how many of y'all have seen those Tim Allen movies with the Santa Claus? Okay. It's pretty fascinating how they take the North Pole and they make it appear like it's like their own little kingdom. In the North Pole, above everybody else. So from the North Pole, you know, they depict and they paint this picture of elves making all these toys. And from the North Pole, they now bring what was at the North Pole down to the rest of the world. Okay? But up there, it's like, when you watch those movies, it's like we got our own self-contained village. We've got everything anybody ever needs right here in this village called the North Pole. So when I watch that, with our grandkids are watching it, or they're at the house during the holidays, and they got it on and everything. I've seen it so many times, you know, when our kids watched it. Now the grandkids are watching it. You know, that it's old news to me. But I sit there and look for the biblical parallels and metaphors, like what we just explained. Okay, so we're not talking about a North Pole type kingdom. Kingdom means the realm of the king's domain. And where the king had domain, what the king said went. It goes. What the king says, it goes. So we're talking about the kingdom, and remember we said, you hear the phrase kingdom of heaven. That's referring to the place where it comes from. The kingdom of God is its influence on the earth. The influence of the king's domain. So it says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth just as it is in heaven. What you're saying is, when God says something in heaven, there is no disagreement. What God says in heaven, it just goes. What he says, goes. So we're saying is we want that same policy to happen here on earth. What God says, happens. God says you're healed, it's got to happen. God says you're delivered, it's got to be the case. God says you're forgiven, you're forgiven. We want to see the realm of the king's domain, if you will, enforced here on earth. There could be a law, and maybe it's not even a written law. It is just a rule. Okay? Like say, for instance, this new cell phone policy. You know, that you're not supposed to have your cell phone in your hand. Okay? Well, I'm sure it's probably written in law at some point, but say, for instance, it wasn't. Say, for instance, it was just a policy that the local governments established, and they said, okay, We're making a verbal announcement that if we catch anybody with a cell phone in their hands while you're driving, we will pull you over. Okay? Well, what's happening is the officers say they see somebody committing that violation, they go pull them over and what? Enforce the rule. We got a law officer that can teach this better than I can. I'm going to enforce what the rule says. Okay? So you're insisting that a policy apply to you. That's all we're saying with the kingdom. Is you're insisting that a king's domain policy, as it goes in heaven, so shall it go here on earth. And he says our job is to see to it that just as easily as what the king says goes in heaven, that likewise what the king says goes here on earth. And that's all he's asking us to do. It's that simple. He said in Matthew 12:28, he says, because they were accusing him of casting out devils in the name of Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies. Okay, where all that Lord of the Flies, movies and stuff came out years ago. All right. They were accusing him of being a witch doctor or a sorcerer, saying, because that's what happened with Balaam and with others, Simon in Acts chapter 8, is they would cast out a lesser demon in the name of a greater demon. So they were accusing Jesus of doing the same thing. All you are is just another run-of-the-mill exorcist. And Jesus says, how can a house divided stand? It can't. You can't have God insisting on something and then Jesus contradicting it. You can't. You can't have, it's not going to happen. And then he proceeded in Matthew 12:28 and he says this, if I cast out devils by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom has come upon you. Why? Because there's no devils in heaven. There's no opposition in heaven. So here on earth, the devils are posing a threat, posing an opposition. And he says, when I say, nope, it ain't happening here, devil, you loose this person. He says, when I do that, he says, all I'm doing is enforcing the king's domain. That's all I'm doing. I'm just simply saying, as it is in heaven, so it's going to be here on earth, at least as far as the extent as it concerns me. As it relates to me, with any and everything I can do within my power, I'm going to enforce the king's domain here on earth. That's all Jesus says I came to do. I came to make earth look like heaven. See, we're so busy in religion on earth wanting to go to heaven, when what we should be doing is knowing that we're going to heaven, we should be more concentrated on bringing heaven to earth. He said, that's all you're doing. That's what the kingdom's all about, is bringing heaven to earth. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, just as it is so freely and fluently in heaven. We want the kingdom just to freely and fluently flow here on earth. That's all he says to do. It's just that simple. He said, but a born-again person can see how the kingdom can manifest in that manner. See, Jesus could see somebody healed before he healed them. He could see them set free and delivered before he rebuked the devil. He could see them raised from the dead before he even prayed for them. He could already see the result before he even administered prayer. And he says, all I'm asking you to do is do the same. And he says, when you're born again, you have the capacity to see what you don't see at the present time. And faith pulls what you don't see in the natural, but you can see it. You can see it in the unseen kingdom realm. And all faith is transferring it from that account in heaven to this account here on earth. That's it. It's a simple transfer by faith. Faith is what transfers what you know exists in heaven, transferred it here on earth. And he says, John 3:5, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom. More on that later. But it's one thing to see the kingdom. That's category when you cross the 50, as we've been using the analogy, once you take a step, cross that 50-yard line, now you can see category 4 of the kingdom. It doesn't necessarily mean you've entered it. Because see, the difference is category 3, you're born again. It gives you the capacity to see how Jesus functioned in category 4. Jesus operated in category 4, wielding dominion over any and every circumstance. He never taught on unanswered prayer because he never had any. That's kingdom. That's category 4 we've been talking about. That's what we all are looking to enter. And he says, if you're born of water, you're born again. And if you're born of the Spirit, which we'll discuss on Sunday, he says, then you can cross from category 3 into category 4 and start functioning like Jesus did. And in order to do that, you understand in category 3, you're given the capacity to see. Category 4, now you transfer what you see in the unseen realm. You just by faith transfer it to the seen realm. I've told you time and time again, and I'm not going to keep repeating it because y'all get tired of the illustration. But with our daughter, when she was getting pregnant and she was believing and wanting twins, one boy, one girl, I could see her with one boy, one girl. I could see it before she even got pregnant. And once she got pregnant, before they even went and did the ultrasound and determined they were having twins, and then after that, before we even had to reveal, I just knew there was a gift of faith. I knew that I knew she's having twins. I could see it. I could see one little blonde-haired little boy looking just like his daddy, and we got that. I could see one little blonde-headed girl with curls looking just like her mama, and we got it. And they were both with me today, and the little girl was taking her thumb, and she's doing this to her chest. Chase me, granddaddy. Chase me, granddaddy. So that's why if I seem a little sweaty, because out there in that 94-degree heat, chase me, granddaddy. That's what I've been doing. Okay? But every time I see them, it's a reminder of that which I could see in the unseen kingdom realm before she even became pregnant, before they even declared twins, and before there was ever even a reveal of the gender. I could see it. We were believing that the unseen realm would manifest in the seen realm. And that's what the whole issue of kingdom is seeing what you don't see presently. But you know by faith. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, and it's the evidence of things you don't yet see. You don't yet see it, but your faith says, I've got it. Your faith says the answer's coming. Your faith says it's going to happen. And Jesus repeatedly told people in the Bible, so be it according to your faith. The centurion, I believe, Lord, if you speak the word, my son is healed. So be it according to your faith. The woman with the issue of blood, I believe if I only touched the hem of your garment, I would be made whole. He says, so be it according to your faith. So what's the holdup of getting the answer to prayer? It ain't him. It's our faith. The inability to see in the unseen realm and then transfer what we see in the unseen realm spiritually, we just know it in here. And by faith to transfer it to where it manifests in the seen realm. Unbelief is just the opposite. Unbelief considers it highly unlikely that the kingdom in the unseen realm can and will intervene and override the diagnosis, the circumstances, the situation that we have seen declared in the seen realm. Unbelief considers it highly unlikely. We've talked about this several times. Well, we can talk about it over and over because it goes in one and out the other, and how you know is what happens when you face a situation. Okay, now we're going to see what you really believe. You can say all you want you believe, but now we're going to really see what you believe. Can you see you being restored? Well, we will show you some examples of that here. Okay? In Mark chapter 6, we're going to be turning there if you hadn't already gotten there. See, Jesus makes a diagnosis. Dr. Jesus, he makes a diagnosis. Just like you go to the doctor, they check out your symptoms. They get you to do this or do that. They may get you to do a little stress test, or they may have you, give them a specimen or whatever like that, and then they will make a diagnosis based on their examination. Okay? Well, Jesus repeatedly gave a diagnosis. And the diagnosis that he identified in the case of many, including his disciples, is a hardness of heart. And a hardness of heart stems from the inability to see. Jesus says, if you can't see what I'm telling you, if you just let it go in one ear and out the other, if you doubt it, you contradict it, you blow it off, you just don't see it happening in unbelief, he says, all that is a result of a hardness of heart. Now, let's show it to you in the Word of how he diagnosed his very own disciples. Remember, there was the mild form of unbelief, apatheia, which means I'm not yet convinced, I'm not yet persuaded. Give me a moment, I'm not quite there yet. We see it in Mark chapter 9 when the demon-possessed boy's father says, I believe, I pistuo believe, but help my unbelief in this particular area. Increase my faith, I'm not quite there yet. Jesus can work with that. But in the religious people, the enlightened, they had apatheia, which was a stubborn refusal to believe. And I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm not going to do a survey, and I'm not going to be looking and scanning the congregation being judgmental. Okay? But I'm telling you, this Sunday, many people are going to be tested. Many people are going to be put to the test on Sunday by what I feel led to preach. This Sunday, you're going to be put to the test to see, can you wrap your head around it or not? Or will you vehemently put your foot down and say, I don't believe that, even though it's in the Word, and I'm going to show it to you in the Word. So are we going to believe the Word or are we not? I'm not going to tell you what we're preaching on Sunday, but get ready. All right, Mark chapter 6. This is when Jesus is walking on the water. Now keep in mind, Jesus was praying. And a gift of the Spirit, a gift of discernment, a word of wisdom, a word of knowledge came to him in prayer. Where the Father spoke something to him, the disciples are in trouble. So he goes to the rescue. And he walks on the water. Now keep in mind, this is the first time they see him walking on the water. It's in Matthew 14 as well. This is the first time they see him walking on water. But when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit. They thought they were seeing a ghost. Maybe he appeared in some ethereal fashion. You recall he had a way, especially post-resurrection, he had a way of appearing differently. He appeared one way to Mary Magdalene, and he appeared differently to the Emmaus two. Mary Magdalene thought he was the gardener. So evidently he appeared looking like a gardener. And then the Emmaus two, they just thought he was an ordinary traveler. Okay? So he had a way of the way he appeared. And here, maybe because of the rain pelting down, maybe because of how cloudy it was and how dark it was, it appeared as if he was looking like a ghost. And they cried out, for they all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he talked with them and said unto them, Be of good cheer, I am. It says, It is I. Mark chapter 6, verses 49 through 52. Mark chapter 6. I see everybody looking around like, where you at? Mark chapter 6. Okay? 49 through 52. Okay? And he says, Be of good cheer. In other words, quit shaking in your boots. I am. This is another manifestation of Yahweh. I am is Yahweh. He's identifying himself as Yahweh. Okay? And be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased. The moment Jesus steps in their boat, the wind stops. Their troubles were over. That'll preach. The moment Jesus steps in your boat, your troubles are over. And he went up into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were sore amazed in themselves beyond measure. They were sore amazed beyond measure. And they wondered. And Jesus says, okay, there's a reason why your jaw dropped. He says, for they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. They had a hard time believing Jesus could walk on the water because they had a hardened heart. They couldn't see him doing such a thing. They may have had the faith to believe that he could heal somebody, but walk on water? I can't see you doing that. So when he did it, they were in unbelief and they just couldn't see him doing that. So they reckoned it to be a ghost because it can't be Jesus. Because we can't believe that he would possibly walk on water. Well, when he walked on the water and got in their boat and the wind ceased, the reason why they were amazed, he gave a diagnosis. It's because your heart's hardened. Why? It says because they had not considered the miracle of the loaves. So what was it they missed about the miracle of the loaves? What was it they missed? What did they miss about the miracle of the loaves?
He could provide.
Huh?
He could provide.
Okay, well, yes, but let's go beyond that. What they missed about it is this. If you study all accounts of the feeding of the 5,000, including John's especially, if you consider all accounts, all right, and we'll go to Mark chapter 8, then we'll come back to this. When you consider all accounts, it says that he took the loaves and the fish and he broke it and he distributed the 5 loaves, which were basically 5 breadsticks, and 2 small sardines because it was a boy's lunch. And he broke them up into little tiny pieces and distributed them among the 12 baskets. The food did not multiply in Jesus' hands. The food multiplied in the disciples' hands. That's what they missed. They thought that when he broke it and they put the lid on it, shazam, it multiplied. It multiplied, if you read it, it multiplied as they were distributing it. When you watch movies, it'll show a big old basket full of fish. Well, that's implying that it multiplied in Jesus' hands when he prayed over it. Well, it had that effect, but he deliberately had it where it multiplied in their hands. You say, where do you get that from? Okay, we'll get to it in just a moment. I'm getting ahead of myself. But in John chapter 6, when Philip comes to him and he says to them, it's getting dark and it's getting late. We either need to, shut down shop now, close the doors, send everybody home. But if we do, we're going to send them home hungry. And it's too late in the day for us to go buy food. What are we going to do? And Jesus looked at him, and it says in John chapter 6, he deliberately did it. He already knew what was about to happen. He deliberately said what he said to test Philip, to test him. And here's what Jesus said. You feed him. So when Jesus gives a word, in that word is the ability to do what he said. Jesus did not say, hang tight, fellas, I'm going to feed them. Jesus says, you feed them. And when they turned around and said, we have no food to feed them, Jesus never backed down from what he said. He never said, you got to be kidding, guys. We have no food? There goes that idea. He never once backed down. And he never even said to them, see, if he had been planning on him multiplying the food in his hands before he distributed to them, then he wouldn't have said, you feed them. And not only that, but when he said, you feed them, and they said, we have no food, he would have said, I'm just kidding, fellas. I'm just messing with you. You know, bring me that lunch here. Let me go ahead and multiply this. Watch what's going to happen here. Watch what God's going to do. He didn't do that. The word says he broke it up, and while it was in his hands, it was 5 breadsticks, 2 sardines, divided pretty equally among 12 baskets. As they began to hand it out, that kept multiplying. There was, Peter's probably sitting there thinking, I only see, I break up bread for our chickens. That's what we feed our chickens. We got, chicken feed for them. But when I walk out the back door, all I got to do is walk out the back door and say, hey, girls. They come flocking to the door. And I got one rooster that'll sit there and jump up on the ledge because he wants to, and I'll throw it through the fence just to get him to back off where I can get in the door. Okay, because I don't even get out. Because like I told you before, I ain't touching no chicken. Okay? Y'all two could probably go pick them up. But I ain't touching no chicken. Okay, if it gets out, it's out. It's free range from there until Anna gets home. Because I ain't going to get no chicken. All right, I ain't touching no chicken. But anyway, I break up the bread in little morsels where they can swallow it. Peter might be looking at it and say, I only see 8 morsels in mine, and I only see about 4 pieces, little bits of fish in mine. Well, he starts handing them out, sitting there thinking, okay, by the time I get to this front row, I'm going to be turning around to Jesus and saying, okay, Jesus, what do we do now? My basket's empty. He gets into the first row and he looks in there and there's still some in there. He goes to the second row, look, there's still some in there. That's what they missed. They missed that when he said, you feed them, he meant you are going to feed them. It's the same thing as when I'm telling you, you administer the kingdom is going to manifest through you. And I'm not backing down of it no matter what kind of circumstances you present to me. And we'll get to that in just a moment. All right. Well, if you will, go to Mark chapter 8. So when Jesus says you feed them, what do you think these disciples were thinking? There ain't no way we can feed them. There's no way we're going to feed 30,000 people because only the men were counted. 5,000 men plus women and children. The average family back in that day, you figure 4 to 6 kids, easily 30,000 people. Easily. They're sitting there thinking there is no way we're going to feed 30,000 people. And you're going to see what they say in John chapter 6 in just a moment. Well, Jesus says, if you can't see yourself doing what I told you to do, if you can't see yourself doing it, it's because you have a hardness of heart. My brother here, God's already told him, you leave where you've been at a number of years, you launch out in Hampton and Allendale counties, and you're going to feed people in these counties. If he was in unbelief and says, I just don't see that happening, he may throw up an excuse. Me at my age, man, I've already retired 3 times, I've retired from Savannah River Plant. I've retired from the sheriff's office. I've retired from ministry. I've already retired I don't know how many times. His wife's already retired from teaching 2 or 3 different times, and everything. We're both retired. I just can't see it happening. Well, guess what? He wouldn't have been preaching at Barnville Baptist this past Sunday morning at 8:30. But he was. Why? Because before he received an invitation, he saw it happening. He saw himself and still sees himself preaching at churches in this area. He saw himself preaching in a nursing home. He saw himself preaching and holding Bible studies. He's holding a Bible study every Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, at Harmony, right up the road. So if y'all real hungry for the word, y'all got 2 nights during the week, y'all can get the word. 7 o'clock at Harmony in their fellowship hall, 8 and 6:30 here. 6 o'clock because we eat. Thank God y'all didn't cut that out after last week, Okay? But you get the point here. He had to see it, and I can testify of the same thing. You got to see it before it manifests. And if you can't see it before it manifests, he says the reason why you can't see it is because of a hard heart. He said that's what he diagnoses. People say, I ain't got no hard heart. I'm open to Jesus. I'm open to do whatever he says. Oh, really? Jesus says if you can't see what I'm saying, if you can't see it, just like doubting Thomas, unless I see the scars in his hands and the nail prints in his feet, I won't believe him. He said, well, fine. You got to see it. And seeing it is in the unseen realm by faith, and in faith pulls it from the unseen into the seen realm. By faith, I'm going to launch out. I'm going to resign my position as evangelism director. I'm going to resign that position, and I'm going to launch out in ministry. But you got to see it. All right, now Mark chapter 8, verse 14. It says, now the disciples had forgotten to take bread. Neither had they in the ship with them more than one loaf. Now, one loaf of bread ain't going to feed. Y'all know how big a loaf of bread is. And it was smaller in those days than it is today. And today, the loaf of breads keep getting smaller. Have y'all noticed that? I mean, a loaf of bread used to be about this long. Now they're about this long. And not only that, but the slice of bread used to be like this. And now the slice of bread is like this. Okay? All right? So, one loaf of bread won't go feed them anyway. And he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Okay? And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he said to them, why reason ye, because ye have no bread? Perceive ye not yet? Neither do you understand? Has your heart become hardened? Has your heart become hardened? Why? Because they didn't understand what he's talking about. Remember, he taught in parables. He says, to you it has been given to know the secrets and the mysteries of the kingdom, Matthew 13:11. But to them, no. To them I speak in parables and they ain't got a clue what I'm saying. He said, but because you have a soft heart, you're going to understand what I tell you. So he's telling the disciples, although y'all may be hanging with me 24/7, if y'all can't see it any more than the thems can't see it, he says, then y'all have the same diagnosis they do, a hard heart. See, they thought he was talking about leaven as in yeast, because he mentioned leaven. They automatically assumed he's thinking bread. Who brought the bread? I didn't bring the bread. You bring the bread? I didn't bring the bread. You bring the bread? You normally bring the bread. How come you remember to bring the bread? And they totally missed it. And we can't get on a tangent for the sake of time. But the leaven of the Pharisees is a religious spirit. Based out of 2 Timothy 3:5. He says they have a form of godliness. They've got religious routine, but they deny the power thereof. And it says and it uses men because of men preaching the gospel in that day. He says anyone, any pastor, and therefore any church that has a form of godliness and denies allowing Holy Spirit and the power of God to operate in the church, he says, stay away, avoid and shun men like that. Stay away from them. You want to choose your friends? You want to choose your church friends? Not necessarily those at this church, but any church, at other churches. You want to choose who you go fellowship with? Those who don't believe in Holy Spirit and the power of Holy Spirit? He says stay away from them. I do. There are ministers in Hampton that don't believe it. They don't believe it. She could tell you. Ministers have told them, say, hey, y'all believe in the gifts of Holy Spirit. And I don't. And that minister says, and as long as I'm the pastor here, it'll never happen here. It'll never happen here. So, do we hang out with those people? Nope. Jesus says, shake the dust off your feet, because the judgment that's coming their way, you don't even want a speck of dust, because just like that fire can follow, that fire can follow gasoline, Same way, judgment can follow that trail of dust. He says, stay away from people like that. And then you got the leaven of Herod. The leaven of Herod is when one's coveted attention is being given to another. You're jealous because somebody else is getting the attention that you used to get. It's like all of a sudden that Mr. Bobby's arrived on the scene, and now he's getting more invitations to preach in more churches than I am. He's teaching more Bible studies. He's getting a chance to preach more revivals than I do. Okay? Well, if I am jealous because my coveted attention, I want to be there preaching. But they're not asking me, they're asking him. If I get over into jealousy and my coveted attention is being given to him, and I choose to attack him, I choose to try to tear him down in front of other people, then that's the leaven of Herod. And he told disciples, stay away from anybody operating in either one. Don't have anything to do with them because it can rub off on you. All right? Well, move on. And they thought he was talking about bread. And it says, when Jesus knew it, he said unto them, why reason ye, have ye no bread? Because you don't perceive, because you don't understand, because is it your heart hardened? Having eyes see ye not, having ears hear ye not. Okay? Well, we're all in a journey here. So if you can honestly go to Jesus and say, Jesus, I really know that I'm born again and I have the capacity to see the unseen kingdom realm, but I'm not there yet. So Lord, increase my faith. I believe, and help thou my unbelief. He can handle that prayer. Lord, I hear people saying, you spoke to them. You know, I heard this one say, well, the Lord spoke to me the other day and said this. Lord, I'm not hearing you. So, Lord, I'm not hearing you speak like I want to hear you speak. Honest prayer. He says if either one of those scenarios is the case, you can honestly admit you're having a hard time seeing the unseen realm of the kingdom before it manifests in the seen realm. You're having a hard time hearing the voice of the Lord. He says, okay, we got to find a ground level from which to start. What's the next words out of his mouth? He says, do you remember? Go back and recollect what all God has already told you in the past to help give yourself a boost of confidence. Go back and revisit all the things God's done for you to build your faith. He says, start remembering what I've done for you. Start remembering the promotions. Start remembering the answer to prayer. Start remembering how I was told I'm going to have surgery and I don't have to have it. Start remembering what God's done for me, and it builds your faith. So you can start climbing the ladder of faith. Okay? He says, when I broke the 5 loaves among the 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? And they said to him, 12. And when the 7 among the 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up afterwards? They said 7. And he said unto them, how is it that you do not understand? 5,000 men plus women and children, 4,000 men plus women and children. When we fed the 5,000, we started with lesser amount, 5 loaves. We fed more people, 5,000 plus women and children. And we had 12 baskets left over. He says in the feeding of the 4,000, we started with more. Instead of 5 loaves, we started with 7 loaves. We fed a fewer number of people, and we had less baskets left over. Instead of 12, we had 7. He said, what's there not to understand? Now, even we in the natural sitting there thinking, I'm not seeing that yet, God. He's just simply saying it's divine math. You're thinking your way of math. He said, my math works differently. My math operates differently. When I tell you to feed 5,000, you're going to feed 5,000. Plus the women and the children. He says, I see things differently than you see them. So, what is also the issue? If you will, turn to John chapter 6. John chapter 6. I want you to see this for yourself, even if we don't get as far as we wanted to tonight. That's okay. It says in verse 1, after these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs in which he was performing on those who were sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountain and there sat down with the disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was near. That's why everybody's in town. Therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that these may eat? Look at verse 6. This he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. I'm intending to transfer the food into the kingdom so that when you touch it, it's going to multiply. He says, Philip answered, 200 denarii, a denarii is 1 day's wage, so 200 days worth of wages of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to even receive a little. Not to fill them up, but even to receive a little. 200 days of wages is not enough to cover it. See, he's calculating with his math, not divine math. Okay? One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said this, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many people? But what are these for so many people? In verse 7, Philip saw the insufficiency of the supply. In verse 9, Andrew saw the vastness of the need. You see the difference? Okay. Philip says 5, 6, 7, 8. $8 ain't going to pay that bill. $8 is not going to replace that wash machine that's broken. Philip's math sees the insufficiency of the supply. Andrew comes to him with his math and says, I've already priced that new washing machine and it's $8.99 plus tax. I see the vastness of the need. One is seeing how little supply we have, the other seeing how vast the need is. And neither one of them is doing divine math. So what did Jesus do? He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Who did he get it from? A boy. 5,000 and 4,000, that only counts the adult males. It does not count women and children. So Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish from someone who didn't count. Someone who didn't even count. Wasn't even worthy of being counted among the number. And he used resources from somebody who didn't count. Now, was 5 loaves and 2 fish enough to feed all these people? No. So what he did is he prayed and he blessed it and he thanked the Father for this. And when he thanked the Father for this, transferring this into the unseen realm of the kingdom, when it came down from heaven, it was enough to meet the need. He gave thanks for what is not enough. This ain't enough. But when you are thankful for that which isn't enough, by faith you're thanking Him. You're remembering, I'm thanking you, Lord, for that which isn't enough. Then the kingdom responds to the faith in being thankful for that which isn't enough. And the kingdom divine math multiplies it so that it now becomes enough. That's the kingdom of God manifesting. When you're thankful for that which isn't enough, it will become enough. And you got to see it happening before it happens. Now, that has to do with material things, food. Before we wrap it up, let me give you one that has to do with healing. Mark chapter 3, back up a few pages. He entered again into a synagogue, and a man was there whose hand was withered. They were watching him to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. They were just looking for reasons to accuse him. You see it in John chapter 8 and verse 3, I think it is, when they put the woman in caught in the act of adultery in front of him. It says they deliberately were testing him to see if they can find grounds for which to accuse him. That's what a Pharisee does. Looking for grounds to write you up. Okay? And he said to the man with the withered hand. He sees the man with the withered hand. He says, "Get up and come forward." And he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do harm on the Sabbath? To save a life on the Sabbath or to kill on the Sabbath?" And they kept quiet. After looking around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart. Why? They were more concerned of the Sabbath, although it's the fourth commandment. They were more concerned about what he was going to do on the Sabbath, looking for grounds to accuse him, than they were in seeing the kingdom of God manifest here on earth so that this man with the withered hand would be made whole again. When we're more concerned about the building than we are the people, we've got a problem. There was a minister, I believe his name, if I remember correctly, was Chuck Smith. Years ago during the hippie movement, I heard this testimony. During the hippie movement, he was pastoring a nice church, nice-sized church, and they just installed some brand new carpet. Beautiful carpet. Well, these hippies, because of evangelism, they were inviting these hippies to come to church. Back during that, 60s, 70s, whenever it was? Okay. And they were coming into the church barefooted. And they were coming in barefooted, tracking in on that beautiful carpet. And the religious people that were on his deacon board or upon his board of elders goes to him complaining, "We got to do something about these hippies because they're messing up our carpet." He turned and looked at him and says, "Well, rip up the carpet." Because you're more concerned about carpet than you are their souls. He says anytime someone is more concerned about maintaining the status of their beautiful building and their beautiful amenities than they are souls getting saved, he said that's a clear indication of a hardness of heart, and such a firm, deep hardness of heart that it makes him angry. Makes him angry. Because a hard heart just can't see. A hard heart just cannot see. Cannot see. Last example, and we hush. Mark chapter 8, verse 22. And they came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to Jesus and implored him to touch him. Taking the blind man by the hand, he brought him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes and laying his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see men, for I see them like trees walking around." Okay? He took him out of the village, and during that time, he says in John chapter 5, "I only do that which I see and hear my Father doing." So as he's escorting this man out of the village, the Father's telling him, spit on his eyes. Do what? Yeah, I said spit on his eyes. Okay. Jesus did exactly what he was told to do. As a result, it says, he looked up and said, "I see men like trees walking around." He's been blind. Now, he wasn't blind from birth, or it would have said it. But he was blind. But now his eyes are open to where he can see men like trees. What's the significance of that? Psalm 1 verses 2 says, "But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night." Talking about a believer who believes in the word and meditates on the word. He will be like a tree. When Jesus prayed for him the first time, he was enlightened. I see men like trees walking. Then Jesus again laid his hands on his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored and began to see everything clearly. His eyes were opened up where he could see. We might be able to see somewhat, but it's a little cloudy. And sometimes we say, Lord, touch my eyes so you can open them wide open so I can see. And it says what happened. As a result, he says he was restored. Restored means back to the original condition that existed before fall. So evidently he wasn't blind as a growing up. Then something happened that made him blind. So this word restored is used because Jesus restored him back to his original condition before he became blind. How many of you have a condition and all you want is to be restored back to the way you were before that condition came on you? That's what Jesus is the business of doing. Restore back to full freedom, one's original standing, what was taken away by a destructive or life-dominating power. How does he do it? He does it by seeing in the unseen realm. So whoever's been attacked by a life-dominating force, a debilitating injury or sickness or diagnosis, can you see them restored back to the original condition? He says if you can see it, particularly the person who's the victim, if you can see yourself restored back to your original condition, and you see yourself restored, and by faith you transfer what you see in the unseen realm into the seen realm, and for long you're going to see yourself back and healed in your original condition. Bending over like you used to without any issues. You can see yourself fully restored. And he says when you can see it, you'll receive it. But when you don't see it, it's because you have a hardness of heart. He says if you can't see it, it's because your heart is hardened. So Jesus spoke to them and said, has your heart been hardened? He may be telling us today or in the coming days when something happens. Is your heart hardened? If you can't see it, then evidently your heart is hardened. So all we do is say, Lord, open my eyes where I can see.